Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the AMA online series with All Things Blockchain. This is our first AMA for 2025. We've been planning this one for a few weeks with our good friends Cadena Legal, and tonight we're thrilled to have Damien Lloyd, who's going to be giving us all sorts of insights into tax, both from a sort of legislative but also a retail point of view, which I know will appeal to a number of people who are on the call. My name is Matt Hooper. I'm your moderator. I'm also the chairperson of All Things Blockchain. All Things Blockchain is a community organisation. We put on community events and run these AMAs, of which we do. Last year we did 9 or 10, and we're probably doing even more this year. And we do in-person events, usually in Brisbane, but we are also going global with our original founder, Danielle Marie, travelling the globe and spreading the good word of all things blockchain. We're chain agnostic, so we'll talk about anything and to anyone who's doing stuff that's legal. I'm going to bouquet all our sponsors. And yes, thank you to our sponsors. Cadena is a relatively recent sign up, but we have a good friendship with Harry Dell, and we're thankful to all our sponsors there. Cadena, you can see hiding away there at the bottom is BlockChat, and also a whole range of sponsors of whom with whom we're very proud to be associated. All Things Blockchain, we also do work with a number of collaboration partners, as you can see there on the screen: Oz CryptoCon, Off-Chain Global, Wave of Innovation, and Women in Digital Economy. Our team it doesn't happen by itself, all these events, and there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. We have a whole team of people working on it, thanks to our team, of whom Rachel was with us tonight. Coming up, a number of you will have already seen in Brisbane, we have the Brisbane iteration of the Stand With Crypto movement. They've been in Sydney and Melbourne, and now it's Brisbane. All Things Blockchain is thrilled to be working with David Menz and the team from Stand With Crypto in Australia. Thrilled to be standing up this event. It's a couple of weeks away now on a Wednesday night. It's going to be at the Precinct in Fortitude Valley, which is the home of ATB again these days. If you can see there, can you see that sign up URL? There is a QR code scannable there. You'll find that on meetup.com under All Things Blockchain, if that's how you came to us tonight, which is probably how you came to us, and it's also on Luma. Stand With Crypto, a couple of weeks away. Keep an eye out for our community hub. It's basically an email list we run off paragraph.xyz. We have nearly 2,000 subscribers there now, and we're really thrilled. We put that out monthly. And the idea of the community hub is to highlight a whole heap of community type events, not only in Australia, but also worldwide, and just generally spread the good word of blockchain. Basically, that's monthly, goes out on the first day of each month. Also need your help to grow. If you're interested in volunteering for All Things Blockchain, we're always keen to have you come along and help out, and also just spread the word, sharing on socials, and we're in all the usual places, of which many you would know. And that's really enough out of me. I want to get over to Damien and find out about the life of Damien Lloyd. Damien, where are you? Just bring you back up. There you go. Yes. So you started out. Well, tell us about your background and your training. So you did tax law as a qualification.
No, so my background is just a straight Bachelor of Law. I did that way back in 2015 in Queensland, and my primary focus, like I really enjoyed contract law, like commercial services and admin processes. And I mean, those may be fairly vague terms, but admin processes really just mean challenging government decisions. So it's probably not a surprise that I'm currently suing the ATO. So,
Doing what you do, yes.
but I got into law originally because I do love the English language. And in particular, I love how courts interpret legislation. So it's a very niche topic. I do actually have a fairly thick book here on statutory interpretation. That served me well with my policy work. But I finished my degree, as I said, back in 2015. And I was volunteering in community legal centres, providing general legal assistance and helping out, or eventually helping out very skilled lawyers at what's a fairly mouthful of an agency, the Australian Health Practitioners Regulation Agency. They effectively chase dodgy nurses and doctors and the like. And it wasn't actually until 2017 that I jumped into the ATO. I'd never dealt with tax before. I was doing general legal advice. But yeah, I jumped into the ATO in 2017, and that's where I actually started to specialize in tax law.
And
And
you're interested in crypto, Damien. Was that sort of building on the sidelines? Are you like a Bitcoin maxi from 2012 or something? Or
no, I actually got into it in 2018,
okay, yeah.
around the time of the I think it was the ETH boom when
Mm,
ICOs were just kicking off.
mm,
So before that, I was doing private rulings. So it's effectively the ATO can give advice to people and taxpayers and advisors on particular tax questions. And we were seeing more and more crypto questions. And my supervisors at the time said, we don't have anyone who's interested nor skilled in any of these topics. So I said, okay, well, I'll do them. And before I knew it, I became a specialist. I was learning alongside very senior members of the ATO and crafting some of the internal views, namely around the taxation of ICOs. So
Yeah, it's a fascinating time to be in there was the height of that. I was going to say I've
difficult
also
time.
I've omitted to do two things. No financial advice, disclaimer. So no financial or legal advice will be given, and also audience participation. We are here. It's not just about me talking. Certainly, it's about you having the opportunity to interact directly with Damien. So maybe if we use the practice of putting up your hand, if you know how to raise your hand. Otherwise, just drop something in the chat and or come up on camera. Don't be shy. We can turn this
Yeah.
into a two-way thing as well. But yes, keep going, Damien. So you're in the ATO. Tell us about. I know from our prep there are some interesting stories. Do you want to highlight one or two of the things, even at a macro level? Some of the strange things you saw on the inside, as much as you can share.
Yeah, so I remember I put in my notes that they like the strange stories all sort of blend together at a point because you're so used to seeing behind the scenes with people's lives. And I mean, when you're in the role, you're not meant to judge, you're meant to be impartial and you're there to look at,
Objective.
yeah, you're meant to look at purely the tax. But sometimes the behaviors that you see bleed into what the tax outcomes are going to be. So in some cases, it might be like the questions that were raised were interesting. So I remember looking at the replacement asset rollover test, and that's normally a concession that's claimed by small businesses when they dispose of an asset and then seek to replace it with another asset. I was asked that question by a brothel around like linen sheets and other aspects of the business that I can't really mention
No.
because I don't know what the the rating of the recording will be.
Let's keep it PG plus. Yeah, PG. Yeah.
Yeah. In other cases, I've worked with, and this is crypto specific, I've worked with data analysts on issues involving the dark web, namely around identity theft and what could be considered proceeds of crime. I've also helped coordinate, like the general term is raid, but the ATO refers to them as accesses without notice. It's a very neutral term, but it's typically where the ATO and sometimes other government agencies will attend a business premise to obtain documents, and as part of preparing for that access, I've uncovered weapons on site. So sort of
You physically.
yes.
Far out.
And then in other cases, it's mainly just catching out people who make very the poorly crafted lies, or like the statements just don't line up. I mean, the ATO has access to a wide range of information, and so if you're, I generally don't recommend that you lie. You should not lie, just in general. But at least like keep your story straight. If you've committed to something, make sure you're consistent. Especially, I mean, it has to be the truth ultimately. But some of the lies that I've caught some people out on, they've said that X million dollars worth of fundraising was part of preliminary activities before a business was being carried on, and yet in their tax returns for like 2 or 3 years, they've claimed small business concessions.
Yep. Let's jump
Sorry,
forward.
I might just quickly detour into the comments because I can see them come up. And similar to what Matt said, I strongly encourage interaction. If you want to drop comments or questions into the chat, or put your hand up, I'm more than happy to stop the chat and
let's fast forward to the Kadena part of the journey, and maybe have a chat about what Kadena actually does. And also, one thing that came up in our preamble was the difference between accountants and tax lawyers. It might be worth diving into that a bit, but a bit of the Kadena story and what you guys are actually working on. It's a relatively small team, but there's some incredible knowledge within that team.
Yeah, so a lot of us have already come from the ATO, so we've got the experience with dealing with government to quite a fair extent. Similar to what we were talking about before, Matt, we're seeing a lot of crypto enthusiasts leaving Australia. Like, a lot of talent is going offshore, and as part of that, we provide advice around, well, how do you change your residency? So you shift from Australia to another country. You have to select the country, as well as, what are the commercial and taxation consequences going to be, not just at the time that you depart Australia, but then moving forward. Is it actually worth going overseas? Is regulation better or worse, etc.? So we have a complex matrix that we work through, and we can give options around, if you were looking at moving overseas, what's the tax impact going to be? How can you structure your assets to minimize the tax around that, as well as
there are obviously variances between all those jurisdictions. I mean, as I was saying before, I don't follow tax law so closely, but I follow crypto regs, or the lack thereof, quite a bit in a lot of jurisdictions. But it's quite a lot of localized nuance where you really do need to know. I mean, even countries like was it Malta? Which was the one up near Cyprus. Cyprus was for some time relatively friendly, right? But I think they pared a bit of that back maybe a year or so ago. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's
So it does, these things it's ever changing.
Yeah, it's mainly the countries that have been historically regarded as tax havens by like established economies. And so then the OECD puts pressure on those countries to change their attitudes towards crypto. And so when they might have previously had more favorable regulation, we're seeing a slow shift against that. And then at the same time, we're seeing established economies like the US go from a very anti-crypto position over to an incredibly favorable one. And the hope is that with that, reversal and the influence that the US has over other jurisdictions, the attitude seeps into other political systems, which may end up, turning the tide back in crypto's favor.
Yes, Martin asks, Trump's come up already. We're gravitating there. I mean, I guess I've looked at a lot of the recent price growth to do with his previous statements, but I'm not. I mean, the SEC chair has fallen on his own sword. Do we really see action before January 20 though? Like, I don't think we can really predict the future, can we?
As in the next,
what's going to happen? Like, from
in
January
Australia
21,
or in the US?
either. Well, the impact here, of course.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see any immediate impact in Australia. It's normally Australia tends to be a follower in terms of regulation. It's normally once other jurisdictions have taken steps, then the ATO will say, "Oh, I'll take a bit of this, I'll take a bit of that, and we'll incorporate that into our legislative framework," unless there's clear pressure from another jurisdiction. So if the US decides to be very aggressive over how it tackles crypto assets, then probably won't see any immediate effect, is my gut feeling. But at the same time, like, politics is really difficult to predict because everyone has their own interest, and it doesn't necessarily align with the crypto industry. It's whoever the political members are at the time, and they'll exercise their influence over government bodies, because
Yep.
government officers don't want to go against what they don't want to go against the law, but they also don't want to go against the governing minister.
Yep. Coming back to what Kadena does, and that those services, having a little look at issues affecting crypto users, maybe. I mean, one of the ones I talk about with people quite a bit is basically, well, I guess that leads into the whole CGT conversation, but for the simple purposes, any movement is basically regarded by the ATO as a CGT event, right? So the classic, the web guidance that they put out, I think late last year, last year maybe, was that even things like moving wrap to ETH is actually a CGT event, which alarmed many of us in the industry, because it really is. It seems to be a lack of understanding of the technology itself.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. So the underlying legal principles, I agree with. It's not the best outcome, but I think it's just because the CGT regime does not work really well with crypto. I mean, CGT looks at the change of legal rights in a thing. So when you have shares, and the standard transaction is that you sell that to someone else, your ownership ends, and then you pick the appropriate CGT event to calculate what your gain or loss is going to be. That's fair and simple when you have a standard asset class like shares or property, etc. But when courts and government haven't made any proper attempt to determine the nature of the rights in crypto, then it makes it difficult to understand how the CGT regime applies, or if it's even appropriate. And I mean, that was made very clear by the fact that we had the Board of Tax commence a review into the taxation of crypto assets. And it is interesting that despite the fact that the report was provided to government back in February of 2024, the report hasn't been published and no one can get access to the report. So I would read into that what you will.
Staking, I saw overnight, it might have been in the last 24 hours, the UK has come out with, I think it was the FCA, is a little bit more friendly towards staking, which I thought was interesting. I'm just trying to find this. And I did notice Martin's comment, yes, SMSF, that's somewhat alarming, because I'm hearing, talking to other tax agents, crypto tax businesses, a lot of their clientele is actually coming from people that are very keen to go 100%, or put 100% of their Bitcoin holdings into their SMSF, etc. So it's a real thing, and people do want to, everybody's trying to maximize their returns. Michaela weighing in with putting GST on all the things. I mean, oh my God, like the tracking these movements and applying GST.
Like.
Oh my God.
I personally don't like the definition of a digital currency in the GST Act. I know a lot of people think it's great. I think it's just sloppy writing. It looks at the individual units in crypto, and some people have said, oh, we should use the same definition when it comes to income tax. And at the moment, if you transfer say Bitcoin, the apparent view is that when you transfer the amount, CGT is triggered on the parcel that is sent. It's not triggered on each individual unit. But if we adopt the digital currency definition, then it would be based on every single unit. And that may or may not have an outcome, but it just seems unnecessary. So
that's the kind of nuance. And as I said to you before the call, having observed this for the last few years, it is the more prescriptive or the more definitions you try to put in place. I mean, look at the the taxonomy that was talked about. I've said there's no coin taxonomy that's forthcoming. It's very hard to find a balance between actually describing some things, like a digital asset definition. I'd love to hear what DECA has to say on that, for example, and others, I'm sure. Blockchain Association in the US, all these entities that have been grappling with, these crypto questions for 10 years plus.
I
you
think
know,
it's
we're playing with language, aren't we? Like,
yeah. So my preference, and I put this to the Treasury when they were running a consultation process, one of many, into I think it was crypto asset service providers. They were looking at a taxonomy, and I said it should be based on the legal rights that you have in crypto assets. Not surprising, a lot of my a lot of my criticisms fall down to, well, what rights do you actually have in crypto? Because the legal classification will dictate other bodies of law. So, sorry, the underlying legal rights and the nature of crypto as property govern other bodies of law, like financial services,
yeah,
trusts, and even taxation. So I said, okay, well, what, you've got the practical ability to do things, but how does that translate into the law? Like, um, when you categorize different asset classes with shares, you have a right to dividends, you have a right to participate in the voting of the company. Like, those are very clear legal rights. That's one taxonomy. When you look at applying that taxonomy to debts, it's a right to be paid a certain amount. In some cases, you have a right to redeem something. And so if we just take that approach with crypto assets, it makes applying other areas of the law a lot simpler, because if you're saying that a crypto asset is effectively a right to redeem an underlying unit, um, that automatically points you to a particular CTT event.
yeah, yeah. So just on that units question, Martin asked, when you're referring to parcels, what are you meaning by parcel?
Yeah, so when you make it, it's very similar to what you said, a transaction. It's different when it comes to each blockchain. So with Bitcoin being a transaction-based blockchain, it'll be each transaction. It'll normally, like, I refer to it as the unspent transaction output, or just the output of that transaction. For account-based uh, blockchains like Ethereum, it will be a change in the account value. And that's normally, like, it's referred to as a state change. So if your account has, say, 10 ETH in it, um, and the state changes minus 5 ETH, then it's a transaction reducing your account by 5 ETH. So that would be the parcel for tax
Dare,
purposes.
dare I bring up debanking? What's the taxation perspective on like, is this a relevant question, or should we talk generally briefly about the debanking? Because I know your founding boss Harry has got a whole startup, based on,
Yeah.
to address this problem.
Yeah, we're trying not to get disappeared by the banks, because and like a really big issue for Australia, and I think for other jurisdictions as well, is the prevalence of uh, transacting through banks, whether it be FPOS or just straight up bank transactions. It's becoming, in business, almost a fundamental legal right. And that if you are debanked, it makes doing business and interacting with society incredibly difficult. So there's, on one hand, uh, the need to challenge the system at the same time as balancing not getting removed from the system. So um, Harry at the moment is trying to balance that tightrope at the moment, and that's partly where Black Sheep comes into play, where it provides better, I guess, like uh, what do they call them? Like guidelines, rails for crypto experiences. I'm not. Uh, I'm not too involved in that one, so I can't speak in detail.
No, no, but it is fascinating. I think many on the call will have either had personal experience or will know others who have. I mean, without getting, I guess, too bogged down in this, the bank side of it is consumer protection. It's, trying to fight against scams, etc. Our friend Michael, who's on the call, he is I call him our chief libertarian. Michael is very much keen to, not work with the authorities, shall we say. in terms of he sees it has a different vision for how society would operate. I think it's been the best way I could briefly sum up Michael's views. God bless you, Michael. Michaela, I was going to bring in the AUDD ladies. We have two, both Rachel and Michaela, on the call. I mean, in terms of dealing with maybe not specifically a debanking issue, but Nevada and AUDD very, very experienced in money movements generally. Garnishing, is that a specific verb there?
It's an ATO term. So if
tell us about garnishing.
Yeah,
It's British Bake
not
Off.
the food related garnish. It's it's the less exciting tax aversion. It's effectively where if you haven't paid a debt, or the ATO believe that you haven't paid a debt, then they can contact a bank or a third party and say, you owe this taxpayer money. Instead of paying them that money, you're going to pay it to me so I can satisfy their tax debt. So, for example,
they can compel that. They can compel that.
Yeah, they have the powers to do that, and they have.
I can see steam coming out of Michael's ears.
If actually people might be interested, there was a Four Corners report on the ATO garnishee powers. It was I forget his name now. There was a whistleblower in the ATO who raised issues around the ATO's garnishee powers, and ATO have been chasing him for, I'd say, maybe 6 years or so, trying to put him in jail for sharing that information.
Yeah. Well, we ended up in an interesting place there. We talked about offshoring, HMRC. Adrian, welcome. Adrian's one of our team.
Nice.
Where have we landed?
The UK tax equivalent.
I see. Yes, I thought it might be.
Yeah, so I think he's referring to the HMRC also garnishing people's bank accounts. It's like a fairly common tool for tax regulators to get access to money that might be withheld in another entity.
Yeah. Now, we've sort of have already touched on it, but do we want to dive into your infamous Bitcoiners property, the whole...
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd call it infamous, not famous. I think people don't want anything to do with it.
It's fascinating too. We're so reliant on, those of us who use LinkedIn are so reliant on the algorithm to feed us the things we do want. Unfortunately, it keeps popping your posts up, so I get regular updates on where you're up to. But, yeah. For those who aren't aware, do you want to give us a 5 to 10 minute primer on what you're pursuing there since 2023?
Yeah. I was actually worried that maybe the ATO was paying LinkedIn to keep them off people's feeds. So I'm glad that it is actually reaching people. So if you aren't aware, I put in a private ruling request. So I put in a submission with the ATO requesting that they answer a simple question. Is an unspent transaction output a CGT asset under Australian taxation laws? So that it seems
What's
like
that code for? What is that code for?
It's effectively, is Bitcoin and every other crypto asset taxable effectively? Like, that description is not completely accurate, but it's enough to give people the gist of it. So if we break it down, Bitcoin or any other crypto asset is a CGT asset if it is some form of property, and we'll get to that definition in a second, or it consists of some legal or equitable rights. And the Commissioner has published tax determinations on Bitcoin specifically, saying that Bitcoin, it doesn't involve any what are known as choses in action, and that broadly means that there aren't any legal or equitable rights in Bitcoin itself. But through the Commissioner's analysis of existing case law, and mainly because Bitcoin had developed a commercial market, the Commissioner was happy to conclude that Bitcoin was a form of property and should be taxed. That may not be surprising for people. I assume Michael in particular.
But there were some flaws in what that you felt were in the response.
Yeah, so I had actually completed a dissertation into the, I guess, the proprietary nature of Bitcoin specifically, and I was looking at the definitions of currency and money and legal tender, things that I know Rachel's actually deeply interested in, and I think the team at AUDD. And as part of my analysis, I actually identified, or in my view, that there was a stronger argument saying that crypto wasn't property. And the argument goes like this. For me, I feel like it's fairly simple, but we'll see how we go. So in order to be a CGT asset, a thing has to be some form of property, right? Property refers to there being some form of property rights. And the cases that I've analyzed have said that before a right or an interest in a thing can amount to property, it has to demonstrate certain characteristics. And I won't go through all the characteristics because that key phrase in the beginning, before a right or an interest, is the most important part. So case law already indicate that you need to have a right or an interest in something before you apply additional tests to say that something amounts to a property right. So broadly, that means you have a base level right, and then there are other characteristics that elevate it up into the category of property. And so I asked the question, okay, well, what does it mean to be a right or an interest? And again, like case law answered it pretty well. It refers to some claim that carries an obligation on someone else to do or not do something. And when it comes to property, it's where a person, like someone is described as having a property right because everyone else has an obligation not to interfere with your property. So say Matt has a house. He has property rights in the house. It means that I can't put a fence around his house and say that I now own it, even though I might have the practical control to restrict his access to the property. He has a claim against the house, and I have an obligation not to interfere with that claim. And that claim is enforceable in a court. So we reach an interesting impasse where the commissioner has said that there aren't any legal rights in Bitcoin or crypto assets generally, but then case law says that you need a right or an interest before something can amount to property. So I just raised the question, if there aren't any rights in crypto assets, then it can't be property. And you can probably guess what the ATO's answer was. I put in the ruling request, and the ATO said there are, the unspent transaction output, or Bitcoin in this case, was property. They didn't give any reasoning. They said, please refer to our taxation determination. And I said, great. I referenced that in my original application. So I asked for the decision to be reviewed, and that's through a process known as objecting. And as we know, I have a background in administrative processes. So I submitted about 100 pages worth of factual and legal analysis, countering that taxation determination. And I also went through, I think, almost every international and domestic case that dealt with the issue.
I was going to bring up again the UK. I mean, I think I know you're dealing with case law and the specifics of the law here, but it is interesting if you can talk briefly on what the UK has done in this space.
Yeah, it's tricky to say because there's two different approaches, one in Parliament and one in case law. So in Parliament, they seem to be concerned that the current law is not capable of dealing with crypto assets. So they introduced a bill saying that just because something is a digital asset doesn't mean, or just because something is a digital asset and isn't a chosen action or chosen possession, effectively, just because there may not be any enforceable rights in digital assets doesn't stop it from being property. Which also begs the question, if there were rights in crypto, why would you need this law?
First place.
And then the case law has said, crypto definitely is property, but we applied all the tests to the thing itself and not the rights. So we never actually identified any rights. We just concluded that it was property. And that position, uh, from what I've seen so far across Singapore, the US, um, even New Zealand, the approach is the same. They apply uh, the tests around what is property and what is not to the thing itself rather than what it was meant to apply to, the underlying rights or interests.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry. So I interrupted your flow there on the overall story, but yeah, back to the
You
story.
mean my rant?
No, no.
So, um, yeah, we
So where's it
are in
at
a difficult
now?
position where, um, at least in my view, we have case law that doesn't really apply the law to relevant facts. And we have foreign parliament who don't seem to be convinced that there are any rights in crypto assets. So they're trying to fix that at the same time. So the ATO, they considered my objection and all 100 pages, and they stood fast to their view. They said that there are, Bitcoin is property under Australian tax law, specifically for the CGT regime. And so that left me with a difficult choice to make whether I drop the issue or whether I proceed to the the administrative review tribunal, or I take it to the federal court. And so in November 2024, I submitted an application with the review tribunal to have the decision reviewed. And so now we are in a bit of a limbo at the moment where,
Waiting.
yeah, pretty much. So the ART, which is the tribunal, have allocated my case, and they've contacted the ATO and said, "Hey, you have a lawsuit against you. It's now time for you to provide documents so that we can decide whether we try and resolve the dispute in a conference or we proceed straight to trial." So I'm currently waiting. I was saying to Matt before, people think litigation is really exciting, or at least like tribunal litigation is exciting, but most of it is just waiting and seeing if the other side is going to listen to your submissions, and then that's it. You're just submitting documents. Like, you're not yelling over the table at anyone. You're not screaming objection and doing anything like the TV show Suits or even Better Call Saul would have you believe. So
But it sounds as if you're not giving this up. I mean, it is quite a significant point to raise. It's a heck of an effort, and it's a heck of a lot of person hours that you've invested into this. I know at your own cost, but do you think you would go the federal court route if you really have to? Like,
yeah, so similar to what you were saying, I've done all of this in my personal time. I haven't received funding from anyone. I've been very fortunate that Tim Edwards and Saxon Rose from Hopgood Gannon have agreed to represent me at the
right.
tribunal. So they're doing it pro bono, completely for free. So they're helping me on the strategy side of things and understanding the complexities of the actual litigation process. Because unless you're doing it day in, day out, like, you're not going to know it as well as the guys at Hopgood Gannon. So
yeah.
they're helping me on that side. I do have an avenue that I am exploring at the moment. So the ATO do have what's known as a test case funding litigation program. So you apply to the ATO and say, "Hey, my case is in the public interest. You should fund it because it deals with a fundamental question of law that needs to be determined."
Yes.
And then the ATO will say, "Yeah, we actually agree with it. We'll front the money and help you take it as high as you need to." So you may notice in other jurisdictions, whenever the question of crypto as property gets considered, it goes all the way up to the High Court of that jurisdiction. So I am a bit nervous that if I do get funding, I would need to go before the High Court. And it's always terrifying going before really experienced barristers and justices, because they have free reign to completely slate you on any of your views. And as much as lawyers try to act tough, appearing before, anywhere between 1 and 7 High Court judges is just
Oh, you only live once.
losing.
You only live once.
Yeah.
And just for my own selfish interest, I know in our notes we've got some mention. Where are we up to? I guess I keep thinking about like financial services regs more than taxation regs. But where do you think what's coming for Australia in 2025? I mean, we've seen some nice photo opportunities with I think the assistant treasurer, appearing with some well established and respected people in our blockchain community recently, and they're saying that they are listening to the innovation stifling argument. They are trying to work with the banks. That's just an ongoing conversation. That whole the bank's perception, and not to not mention either. The banks do have digital asset arms. I'm sure Michaela could speak to this. There are some very well knowledgeable people, like I think of Sophie Gilder at CBA, Kate Cooper, I think is former NAB. She's now been with Zodia. I think is now moving on to something else again. But some very smart people in banking. It's not that banks aren't aware, of digital assets in terms of cross-border movements, financial
Jumping
settlements.
ship even to the crypto industry. They're seeing everything that's being done.
Some certainly very, but yeah, just for my own selfish and hopefully for the benefit of the audience, where do you think Australia is up to this year in terms of specific pieces of legislation, if any, that might be coming?
I think the change in sentiment, the fact that DECA and other industry bodies have got a foot in the door is really promising.
It's been years of knocking.
Yeah, my only concern is this just a way to placate the industry while they sort of get their ducks in a line?
We are coming into an election cycle as well. For posterity, this is being recorded on the 13th of January, 2025.
Yeah.
So,
but I would keep in mind as well, like it's sort of a catch-22 when you go into an election cycle, because when we had Labor come in, at the time Liberal were conducting the consultation for crypto asset service providers.
I can't believe it's already a 3-year term away. You're like, it's just it's so short of 3 years.
It feels like there was interest at the time because the public were pushing for change, and it was, at least in my view, a good political move to appear like they were doing something, and then nothing has really happened. Like, we've had a second consultation process with no movement, and it kind of feels like maybe this is being used as a way to, it's to swing votes either way, so that either one government stays in power or the other one regains control. But again, like, I'm more skeptical around political process and government process. If we start to see draft legislation, then I will feel more confident. But consultation processes appear, they die.
So Info 225 is out there now. I think that closes, is it end of this month or early February? It can't be far away.
I think it's February. I'm not too worried about the information sheet because that's ASIC led, and it relates to their guidance. It's not the ASIC have an obligation to enforce the laws that it's responsible for.
Yes.
And guidance that clarifies the law, like, that's nothing controversial. They can do that regardless of what government wants.
Yeah, but it's a pointer, isn't it? Like, I look at it, any sign of life is because what we're really talking about is a lobbying effort, really, in one, whether it's lowercase l, but it is about people banging on doors. Who are they going to listen to, and for what reason, and when? There are a multitude of reasons as to why they would or wouldn't. I spent a lot of time in the AI space, and also cybersecurity to some degree, because it affects us all. But I feel like perhaps the feds are faster to respond to particularly the consumer protection argument or discussion in some of those areas, rather than paying attention to decentralized ledger. That's my reading. Like, it's just not generally top of mind.
Yeah, I think they respond really well to the consumer protection because it draws in voters. So if the main at least from what I've seen, government tends to react, or at least the legislature tends to react faster if, uh, as you said, like more people are banging on the door and you can demonstrate that there's going to be a broader effect on more people
Yes,
because
which in
yeah.
our case, the frequently touted is that innovation angle. We're stifling, we're a small pond in which we're playing anyway. People are, running off to San Fran to set up or running off to Dubai. 'Cause, San Fran, the US story, because there's more VC money, it's a bigger pond generally. So it just goes on and on.
Singapore,
Singapore, yeah.
UAE, Dubai. I've seen some in Portugal.
Mm.
Yeah, he like more and more people in the crypto space appear to be becoming digital nomads. But like I think DECA and other industry bodies are on the mark. Like they need to push more on the minister side rather than the government side. I think they'll get more traction if they can quantify the damage that's being done to the Australian economy and as well like the Australian people.
Yeah,
Pushing the consumer protection, the debanking issues.
yeah,
They can quantify how much revenue is leaving Australia.
yeah.
I think that will strengthen government action because
Yeah.
the ministers, like, they've got portfolios that cover a lot of these government agencies. So if you just go straight to the top and exert the pressure there, then you're not going to have, like, at the end of the day, government, at least the executive government, have to apply the law as it's written. If you can't mount an argument that the law is incorrect, then you need to go after the ministers to change the law.
Yes. That's a good way to sum it up. Any questions? I haven't. We have gone. I was. Well, I will say one more thing before we go to questions. But yeah, Haley, do you want to type or jump on or?
Yeah, I'm
Hey,
here.
Haley.
Um, I was just wondering if any of these laws, I mean, all Damien's work, for example, if anything did sort of change in terms of regulations and how crypto was, how they classify it. Would that be sort of effective immediately? Would they sort of go as of this date forward? Like what would happen
Yeah.
in,
Well, is it? Yeah.
retrospect?
Is it retrospective?
Like if you've put in, 2 years, 10 years worth of tax and it's
Well, actually, from a pure tax point of view, people do need to be very wary. And I'll let you talk to that side, that retail side, Damien.
Oh, do you want to? Sorry,
Yeah.
I thought you were leading into like you were going to give an opinion and then I would.
No. I'll leave it to
yeah,
you.
so in terms of legislation generally, so it can apply retrospective or it can have a start date anytime in the future. There's normally a weighing up of the compliance cost. So if they were to backdate it for a certain number of years, what's the actual effect going to be on the public? Will they have to go back and amend tax returns? Is it better that there's some transitional period where people get used to the new rules? So it might be like a 6 or 12-month period before the rules start. Or it could just be effective immediately if there's been a public consultation and people should be broadly aware about it. So it really depends on the terms of the legislation and the impact that those terms will have on the public. But it's actually something that I'm considering right now because it's funny that you mention if there's going to be changes in the law. So say I win in court and Australia adopts the position that there's no rights in crypto assets. That's going to be a huge change. It would be something like 16 years worth of taxation would be completely incorrect. So the ATO would arguably need to repay 16 years worth of taxation on crypto assets, which is just inconceivable. I don't even know what the quantum of tax collected on crypto assets would be. So naturally, the ATO don't want to do that. They don't want to have to pay back millions or billions of dollars worth of crypto taxation. So they would push to create rights or create a. Sorry, Michael is right. I shouldn't have used that word. I'm having thoughts back to The Princess Bride. And so the ATO or government would seek to create rights in crypto assets, or at least make it a statement that says that crypto assets are property. So I thought I would just go and write the bill myself. So I'm a week away from releasing to the public a draft bill that creates rights in crypto assets, outlines, what those rights are, who can have rights, and what you can do if someone gets in the way of those rights. So I've tried to keep it as technology neutral as possible. I refer to them as protected data entries because there's something, it's less likely if it was introduced into a parliament to be seen as, oh, this is a bill to protect, money launderers or whatever. It's this is a broad term that might be more favorable.
You need to wrap at the top of the hour, Damien, but there's a quick one there. I'm not sure if the pet planner had a question, but I did see the pet planner sort of come up to the stage, but maybe very quick fire answers if you can, please, Damien. Michaela's got an excellent question about wrapping Bitcoin to move from one chain to another. It's a CGT event, but if you move your Bitcoin into an ETF, such as Monochrome, it's not.
It's tricky on the ETF side of things because the ATO has an administrative approach, but if you ask them to put it in writing, and they've said this specifically, they will give you the opposite view.
You've actually posted on this, I think. You've written on this.
Yeah. So you're right. If you wrap crypto into another, like into a wrapped version, then you trigger a CGT event. The ATO take the official view that if you move crypto into an ETF, like you need to look at the terms of the ETF itself, because it might be in a unit trust or it might be in a bear trust, and those are two like very different kinds of legal relationships. You're surrendering your Bitcoin, and in return you're receiving a unit.
Yes.
In a unit trust.
Yes.
In the case of, I think, Monochrome, and I haven't looked into it too deeply, but I believe their product disclosure statement says that you enter into a bear trust, and bear trusts are treated differently under Australian tax law, where it doesn't really recognize that there's a CGT event. But again, like that's an administrative treatment. I think if you were to write into the ATO and say, what was the actual treatment, they would probably say that it's also a CGT event.
We'll wrap shortly. I've got one point which I want to close on, maybe for Haley. But Robert up above says, it sounds like the situation normal is confusion in crypto tax in general. I don't know if you've got it's nuanced.
I think that's a fair statement, but it's not on the crypto industry for that confusion. I think it might just be a lack of capability and the quality of the web guidance.
The web guidance is challenging. It's problematic. What I was going to say to Haley, sorry, Damien. Okay. There was some, even if I think it was a little bit more than like Channel 9 news type, crypto alarm bells news, but there was some serious talk from the ATO. Was it middle of last year that they are looking back around 10 years or so? Was it that at the time there was this talk that yes, they are going to go further back, and you'd better be keeping good records.
Oh, that's weird because their previous guidance says that they wouldn't commit compliance resources to going back to.
Well, I'm sure it was semi-anecdotal, but I'm sure I read something about this. Yeah, Robert, if you've got something you'd like to say.
The government's so far behind in, they're just playing catch up from so far behind that it's a hopeless kind of predicament.
Yeah, courts have referred to the issue around technology and the law. They liken it to the tortoise and the hare. The hare of technology races forward, and the tortoise of the law ambles slowly behind. So it's forever, as you said, Robert, like a catch up between the law and regulators catching up with technology.
Yeah, it was there with us, and with AI, it's rapidly, we're in a rapidly evolving technology landscape now. Like seriously.
Yeah, it makes it difficult as well because like most people are genuine operators. They don't like intentionally exploit the law or the uncertainty for their own gain. But you do have larger players, not all large players, but they identify, like they've got the resources to identify gaps in the law, and they might receive views that say, look, you really shouldn't do this, but no one's actually confirmed it, and then they move forward anyway, knowing that they could be harm to people. So
Yeah,
I
Quantum's
think
another one. Yeah, Quantum's
yeah,
another one.
it's forever a problem where you've got like the lag in views being confirmed or regulators stepping in and innovators going ahead and building the things that they want to build. Like I don't have any issue with innovators. It's more just like just be a bit responsible in
Yeah.
how you're handling things, and also like it's on regulators as well. Like you need to step up earlier. Don't just assume that things are going to die out.
Because when I started trading around 2017, they seemed to treat crypto a lot like shares, the tax treatment of them, and that's as it's gotten more complex and harder to kind of control, then
Yeah.
that's just added more confusion.
Yeah, I think people realize they could do so much more with crypto as well, and people are more willing to test things out because they could make some pretty good money on some of the new innovations in the space with bridging and branching out into new ERC versions, and it just, at least for me, like it caused so many headaches trying to get my head across the way different smart contracts worked, and like I had to go in and learn some of the coding languages so that I could read some of them.
And ordinals and things like that,
Yeah, yeah.
Probably better wrap it up, guys, but it's been a wonderful chat. We have covered a lot of ground. I think we covered pretty much all the main things we thought, and we had a few interesting questions. Thank you to everyone for participating and throwing those in. I think what my summary there, listening to Robert and Damien, would be to tie it back in with what Damien said at the outset, is we're grappling with trying to put into language, effective language, terms which will help to treat the handling of this, these technologies. So it's not an easy task, and you do feel like you're forever playing catch up, but it makes life interesting, that's for sure. Any last words or thoughts, Damien?
No, not really. I mean, if you want any help,
Thanks, Katrina.
Cadena is more than happy to assist. I can give you a brief rundown of the sort of things that we do. Like we do comprehensive structuring advice. If you need help with drafting crypto specific documents, or even executing stuff relating to crypto businesses, we're more than happy to help. I've got heaps of experience representing people in disputes with the ATO, whether it's audits, reviews, objections. We've landed some pretty exceptional outcomes for clients in the past. We can provide legal advice on non-tax issues. Yeah, anything you need, really.
Check out Black Sheep Capital as well.
Yeah, check out Black Sheep. Keep an eye out. If you did want to connect with me on LinkedIn, feel free. I'll be posting that consultation process in the next couple of days. I'd love to get everyone's perspectives on that.
Damien Lloyd, yeah, they're looking you up.
Yeah. Is there a way that I can share like social media details?
Thanks, Robert. Yes, we could. Well, if have you got it handy there? What's your LinkedIn? You can just put it in the chat.
I think it's literally just Damien.
It's in the meetup anyway. It's in the meetup.
Might be that.
Damien Lloyd. Yeah. It's in the
Either
meetup.
way, like hopefully that should get you close to where I am.
I hyperlink in the meetup. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to people from interstate and maybe even overseas joining us, the wonders of modern communications. And it's been really wonderful hearing from Damien Lloyd from Cadena. This has been our AMA for the 13th of January, All Things Blockchain. Thank you very much for joining.
Thanks, everyone.